In the vast, humid theatre of colonial resistance, few acts were as quietly defiant and gloriously petty as the city of the White Jaguar, Sakbalan. Nestled deep in the jungles of Chiapas, Mexico, this Maya city didn't just resist the Spanish, it ghosted them completely for over a century. Hello, you lovely people. I'm AncientSwan. That was an introduction, and I see zero reasons to waste any more time, so let's get stuck in. To understand the full brilliance of Sakbalan's resistance, we need to zoom out. The Spanish first encountered the Maya in 1502 when Bartholomew Columbus spotted a large trading canoe off the coast of present-day Honduras. But the real trouble began in 1517, when Francisco Hernández de Córdoba landed on the Yucatan Peninsula and was promptly ambushed by Maya forces. Unlike the relatively swift collapse of the Aztec and Inca empires, the Maya conquest was a 200-year war of attrition. After the fall of Lacan-Tun in 1586, the Lakandon-Ch'ol Maya rebels didn't launch a dramatic counteroffensive or pen a fiery manifesto, and why would they? They'd spent the previous century watching their brethren get butchered by the men on horses. I think it's fair to say that after a century at failing at fighting back, a wise man would start to think up a different plan. So they did something far more effective. They packed up, they disappeared into the jungle, and they built Sakbalan, a city so well hidden, it made the Spanish look like they were trying to find Atlantis with a blindfold and a broken compass. Sakbalan wasn't just a geographical relocation, it was a mood, a vibe, a 17th century game of permanent hide-and-seek carved into the jungle. Its very existence was a passive-aggressive masterpiece, a slow-burning no thanks to colonial intrusion. The city's architecture, for instance, seemed designed less for defense and more for psychological warfare. Defensive walls weren't just barriers, they were statements. Please don't knock, we're not interested. Temples were built at angles that made it nearly impossible to hold a sermon without tripping over a jaguar statue. Water systems were engineered with such precision that any attempt to build a church plaza would result in a spontaneous baptism via flood. And the Spanish, they tried. Oh, how they tried. For 110 years they tried. They wandered the jungle like a clingy, wet fart. But instead of finding more Maya, they just found cryptic pottery, smug murals, and the overwhelming sense that the city was laughing at them from behind the trees. The name, Sakbalan, translates to White Jaguar in the Ch'ol Maya language. The White Jaguar likely held deep mythological and spiritual meaning, representing power, mystery, and resistance. Jaguars were sacred animals in Maya cosmology, often associated with the underworld, the darkness of the night, and elite rulership. A white jaguar, being rare and striking, would have amplified that symbolism, perhaps serving as a metaphor for the rebels themselves, elusive, powerful, defiant, and not completely adverse to slaughtering the occasional passing Spaniard. So when the Lakandon-Ch'ol fled Spanish conquest, after the fall of their capital Lacan-Tun in 1586, they didn't just build a new city, they built a sanctuary named after a creature that embodied their spirit. Sakbalan wasn't just a place, it was a declaration. We are still here, you just can't see us. When the Spanish finally stumbled upon Sakbalan in 1695, they did what any emotionally exhausted empire would do. They renamed it Nuestra Señora de Dolores, Spanish for Our Lady of Sorrows, because nothing says we're sorry we finally finished you off, like projecting your colonial disappointment onto a rebel city that never invited you in the first place. But Sakbalan wasn't conquered. It wasn't destroyed. It was simply done. By 1721, the city was abandoned, not with a bang, but with a shrug. The Maya had moved on, leaving behind cryptic murals and defensive structures that whispered, "We're not mad, we're just disappointed." Sakbalan's strategic brilliance lay not in its military might, but in its refusal to play the game. It didn't offer the Spanish a climactic battle or a dramatic last stand. It offered silence, absence, a city that said, "We'll be over here thriving in obscurity while you write sad letters back home to your wife about how the jungle keeps winning and the snakes are really bitey, and it's not your fault." The Spanish didn't fully subdue the last independent Maya kingdom, Noypeten, until 1697, just 2 years after they finally located Sak-Bahlán. Coincidence? Or did the jungle itself conspire to deliver one final middle finger? Fast forward to the very recent 21st century, circa 2025, and Sakbalan re-emerges not through divine revelation, but through GIS technology and colonial records. The discovery of Sak-Bahlán was made possible by Josué Lozada Toledo, a researcher from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, who heroically wielded geographic information systems, GIS, like a digital machete through centuries of colonial ambiguity. Armed with modern tech and the kind of confidence only predictive modeling can provide, Lozada reverse-engineered a 17th century travel diary into a treasure map. The source? Spanish friar Diego de Rivas, whose letters from the 1690s generously detailed a 4-day jungle slog followed by 2 days of canoeing, because nothing says precision like vague colonial timekeeping and drifting down a river for a while. Lozada, undeterred by the minor inconvenience of ambiguity, fed terrain data, water routes, vegetation density, and even average human carrying capacity into his software, presumably while whispering sweet nothings to his algorithm. Fieldwork commenced in the mathematically conjured zone near the Jateit and Ixcan rivers, deep in the Montes Azules Biosphere Reserve, Mexico, also known as the place where GPS signals go to die. The team, bravely reenacting 17th century exploration hardships, but with mosquito repellent, satellite internet and 3-ply toilet roll, eventually stumbled upon architectural remains that matched both Maya construction and colonial descriptions of Sakbalan. So, credit where it's due, the ruins were exactly where the model said they'd be, because sometimes even history listens to Windows 11. Archaeologists, armed with satellite data and a growing sense of mosquito-induced existential dread, rediscovered the ruins and promptly declared it a major archaeological find, which, to be quite honest, is what they always say, but we can let them off on account of how desperately they always are for funding, and clickbait titles do be helping with that. And what a find it was. The ruins of Sakbalan tell a story not of defeat, but of strategic silence. It's the ancient equivalent of leaving that WhatsApp group, blocking the admin and starting a new one with better jokes and significantly less unsolicited dick pics. The city's legacy isn't just in its stones, it's in its attitude. It's a masterclass in passive resistance, a blueprint for how to say no without ever raising your voice. Even the rediscovery feels like a cosmic joke. After centuries of colonial obsession with civilizing indigenous spaces, Sakbalan reappears like a ghost with perfect timing. Oh, you're still looking for us. That's adorable. The jungle, it seems, has a sense of humor, and lost missionaries are the punchline. The site has now been officially entered into Mexico's National Registry of Archaeological and Historic Monuments as Sol y Paraíso, probablemente Sakbalan, meaning sun and paradise, probably Sakbalan, due to the overwhelming fact that nothing screams absolute certainty quite like the word probably. Quickly, before we continue, let me take a second to ask that if you are still here, still watching, and even slightly enjoying whatever this thing is that I'm going to call a video, then please do also like and subscribe. I am a new channel, and there is a rumor going around that the algorithm likes it when you like things, so please do that, because I also like it when you like this thing I'm doing now. Thank you. Now then, where were we? Ah, yes, and so for the end of Sakbalan comes also the near end of this video lesson. But firstly, what have we learned from today's lost city? Well, for me, I am reminded that in a world obsessed with dramatic gestures and loud defiance, sometimes the most powerful rebellion is simply just to walk away. Building your own space, refusing to engage, and leaving behind a jaguar statue that seems to roll its eyes every time someone says conversion. Coincidentally, I've been using this same tactic with my wife for quite some time now. Just walk away and sulk somewhere quietly for a while. Without the jaguar statue, of course, I don't have one of those. No, I usually just head to the man cave with a bottle of wine instead. When someone tries to colonize your vibe, such as my wife did earlier this week, remember Sakbalan. Build your walls, hide your temples, and leave behind a mural that says, "Not home right now, try again in 110 years," or "Never, never is also good." I've also learned that no matter how good you are at hiding or how long you've been doing it, there's a very good chance a missionary will find you in the end. You cannot hide from the super-religious. You can only hope they don't notice you long enough for you to have a decent life in peace. And finally, because all good lessons end in threes, perhaps I've also learned that all the time in the world can still not be enough. 200 years or 20 minutes, war only ever ends when the attacker says it does, through defeat or victory. So don't get too complacent, even in your mosquito-ridden jungle hellhole, because there's always enough time for you to be caught. But also, don't forget, if you put locks on your bedroom doors, then this can give you at least another few minutes before the invading, conquering wife lets herself in. And in this perspective, all time is bliss and anything is better than nothing. And on that note, I am very almost out, but not before we give the quickest shout out to the world's greatest Patreons, George H., David R., Stephen, Malichi I, DD and Anthony T., without whom my wife would have even more reasons to come looking for me. I love you guys dearly, and that's all, ladies and gents. Peace, love, and Sakbalan. Good, bye.